After 10 years of acting like I didn't exist, my family showed up at my front door like they owned the place. They expected the old me. What they got was the reason their faces went pale. My family didn't cut me off with a fight. They cut me off with silence. No calls. No invitations. No holidays. Just a quiet decision, made over years, that I wasn't worth keeping around. So when my doorbell camera alert went off last Sunday morning, and I saw 7 of them standing on my porch, I didn't feel excited. I felt the same cold feeling you get when you realize something you thought was dead is suddenly moving again. It was 9 a.m. I was in my garage working on a custom motorcycle build, hands greasy, mind peaceful. The kind of morning I earned after years of building a life from scratch. Then my phone buzzed. I checked the camera feed, and my stomach dropped. Standing there like they belonged on my property were people who hadn't spoken more than a few sentences to me in 10 years, my grandmother, Patricia. My Aunt Monica and her husband Steve. My cousins Tyler and Brandon. And my older brother Jake, with a woman I didn't recognize. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Because the crazy part wasn't that they were there. The crazy part was that they looked nervous, like they knew what they were about to do was wrong, but they were doing it anyway. I watched them whisper to each other. My grandmother adjusted her purse like she was preparing for a negotiation. My uncle kept checking the road, like he didn't want neighbors to see. 2 cars had pulled up, my brother's beat-up older sedan, and a rental. And then they rang the bell again. My first instinct was to ignore them. To let them stand there until they got tired and left. Because these were the same people who decided I didn't matter back when I had nothing they wanted. But I felt something else too. Curiosity. Not emotional curiosity, strategic curiosity. Because people don't drive out to a house like mine, on a Sunday morning, 10 years after pretending you don't exist, unless they need something. My name is Derek Hale. I'm 35 now. And the reason this moment mattered is because my family spent most of my life treating me like the cautionary tale. Growing up, success in our house had one definition: college. Corporate job. Safe path. Anything else was embarrassing. My parents weren't monsters. They weren't cruel. They were just narrow. My brother Jake was their pride. Straight A's. Sports. Scholarships. The golden boy. Me. I was the kid who took things apart and built them back better. I built treehouses. I welded metal. I fixed engines. I loved working with my hands. And in my family, that meant one thing: potential disappointment. Every Sunday dinner at my grandmother's house felt like an award ceremony, and I was never the winner. Jake sat next to her, telling stories about his plans and his future. I got pushed to the end of the table, even when I was almost grown. When Jake succeeded, the whole family celebrated. When I created something with skill, it was always, "That's nice, but what about a real career?" I learned early that love in my family came with conditions. So when I turned 17 and started working construction jobs on weekends, I didn't do it to rebel. I did it because I was good at it. I was making serious money, more than most adults in our circle expected from someone my age. I saved. I learned. I stayed disciplined. And when I told my parents I wasn't going to college, it was like I confessed to a crime. My father called me irresponsible. My mother cried like I'd ruined my life. And my grandmother looked me in the eye and said, "Manual work is not a future. You're embarrassing this family." That was the moment I stopped begging them to understand me. I moved out. I got a job with a construction crew. And I learned the trade the hard way: early mornings, late nights, bruised hands, constant pressure. I wasn't partying. I was building. And while my brother was being praised for stability, I was learning how to create stability from the ground up. By 23, I started my own company. 3 people. 1 truck. A small loan and every dollar I'd saved. Those first months were terrifying. But I didn't quit. I learned bidding. Permits. Payroll. Suppliers. I took jobs nobody wanted and did them better than anyone expected. And when I landed my first big contract, I made the mistake of thinking my family might finally be proud. I told them at a holiday dinner. They barely looked up. They told me the market would crash. They told me it wasn't real success. They told me to get serious. And my grandmother said the line that changed everything: playing contractor is fine for now, but when are you going to become an adult? That night I left early. And I stopped trying to be seen. And for years, they got exactly what they wanted. A version of me who wasn't in their way. Until last Sunday morning. When they showed up at my door. And I finally decided, I wasn't going to ignore them. I was going to let them walk inside, and face the truth. I didn't open the door angry. I opened it calm. Because anger gives people an excuse to dismiss you. Calm forces them to listen. When I opened the door, the look on their faces said it all. They expected the construction kid they used to talk down to. Instead they saw a man who looked like he belonged where he stood. I didn't invite them in right away. I just looked at them, one by one, and said, "Can I help you?" My grandmother forced a smile. "Derek, what a beautiful home." "Hard work pays off," I said. Aunt Monica jumped in fast, like she'd rehearsed it. "We were in the area. There's a family reunion nearby, we thought we'd stop by." I almost laughed. They hadn't stopped by in 10 years. But I stepped back and opened the door wider. "You coming in, or are we doing this on the porch?" They filed inside slowly. And the second they stepped into my home, their eyes changed. Because the place didn't look like luck. It looked like intention. High ceilings. Custom finishes. Strong, clean lines. Everything built to last. My cousins walked like tourists. My brother's wife, let's call her Brittany, kept scanning the space like she was mentally pricing it. My grandmother said almost nothing. She was recalculating. Because in her mind, I was supposed to be the grandson who never became anyone. And here I was, living proof that her judgment was wrong. I made coffee. I put out pastries. Not because I wanted to impress them. Because I wanted them to sit down and say it. Say the reason they came. We made awkward small talk for a few minutes. Weather. Traffic. The drive. Then Aunt Monica cleared her throat. That sound, the "here we go" sound. "Derek, we've been thinking about family lately." There it was. She continued carefully, "Jake has been struggling financially since his divorce. Legal fees, custody, it's been hard." I kept my face neutral. "Is that right?" Uncle Steve jumped in immediately, like he wanted to sound smart. "And there may be an opportunity, an investment situation, you know, in construction. With your experience, we could do something as a family." My brother stared at his hands. Not because he was ashamed of them for being there. But because he was waiting for me to fix it. My grandmother leaned forward like she was closing a deal. "We've missed you, Derek. It's time to put the past behind us." Then she said it, the line they always use when they want something: family takes care of family. I didn't react. I just took a slow sip of coffee, and asked one simple question: "Remind me, when was the last family gathering I was invited to?" Silence. Real silence. The kind that exposes everything. Aunt Monica tried to dodge. "Well, you know, everyone gets busy." "No," I said gently, but firmly. "I don't know." "Tell me." My brother finally spoke. "Derek. I know we haven't been as close as we should have been. I looked at him. Close. I kept my voice calm. I haven't gotten a call, a text, a birthday message, or a holiday card from anyone in this room in years. Their faces tightened. Because facts are heavy. And then I said the part that made the color leave their faces: you got married and didn't even tell me. My brother swallowed hard. I kept going. And now you're here, because someone saw my life online, and you realized I'm not who you told people I was. Aunt Monica's eyes watered. My grandmother looked like she might stand up and leave. But I wasn't done. Because calm doesn't mean soft. It means controlled. And I had 10 years of silence to put into words. I stood up. Not to intimidate them. To make sure they understood this wasn't a negotiation. Let me explain something, I said. When I started my company, I called Dad to tell him about my first major contract. I paused. You know what he said? Nobody answered. I looked around the room. He said, "That's nice. Jake just got promoted." My brother's face went red. I turned to my grandmother. "When you had surgery years ago, I drove to the hospital with flowers." I looked at Monica. And I got turned away. I sat in a waiting area like a stranger. Aunt Monica opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Because you can't explain your way out of what you did when someone finally says it out loud. I sat back down. "So no," I said quietly. "You don't get to use family like a key when you locked the door on me for a decade." My cousin Tyler tried to soften it. "Man, maybe we all could have done better." "Stop," I said. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just final. Better means you tried. I looked at him. None of you tried. And that's when Brittany, the new wife, decided to speak like she ran the room. "I don't care about old drama," she said, standing up slightly. "Jake needs help. You clearly have money. Family helps family." That sentence hit the room like a slap. Even my relatives looked uncomfortable. But she kept going. "You have all this, and you're just going to hoard it?" I stared at her for a moment. Then I said, calmly, "What do you do for work?" She blinked. "I do content. Social media." "Okay," I nodded. "How much do you contribute to Jake's situation?" Her confidence slipped. "That's not, how much?" I repeated. Silence. Because the truth was obvious, she didn't come to reconcile. She came to collect. And suddenly I understood something even bigger: my family didn't just ignore me. They built a whole story about me. A story that made them feel superior. A story where Jake was the winner and I was the lesson. And now reality was standing in front of them, and they didn't know how to handle it. I leaned forward. "You know what hurts the most?" They waited. "I would have helped, if you were family." I let that sit. I've helped people who showed up for me. People who worked beside me. People who respected me. I didn't list numbers. I didn't show accounts. I didn't need to. I said the truth: I've paid for my crew's emergencies. I've helped people rebuild after disasters. I've invested in people who never laughed at me. My grandmother whispered, "Derek, we didn't know." I looked at her. "You didn't know because you didn't care enough to ask." That was the moment her face changed. Not anger. Something worse. Regret. Because regret shows up when it's too late to rewrite what you did. My brother's voice cracked. "I didn't realize you were doing this well." I nodded once. "You didn't realize because you were busy letting everyone talk down on me." I stood up again, and walked to the front door. I opened it wide. And I said the line that ended the whole visit: "I'm not your backup plan." I looked at each of them. "Get out." They walked out slowly. No shouting. No dramatic collapse. Just the quiet shame of people who finally understood what they'd done, and what they'd lost. My brother stopped at the doorway and turned back. Derek. I know I don't deserve it, but if you ever change your mind, I looked at him. And I didn't hate him. That's what shocked me. I didn't hate him. I just didn't trust him. Jake, I said, if you want another chance, here's what that looks like. He waited. You fix your life without using me as a solution. He swallowed. You learn how to respect people when you don't need them. His eyes watered. And if you can do that, maybe one day we can talk like brothers. He nodded. Then he stepped off my porch. And they all drove away down my private road, like a bad memory leaving my property for the last time. I stood there for a minute. Not triumphant. Not proud. Just lighter. Because for the first time in 10 years, I wasn't trying to earn love from people who only show up when they smell profit. My phone buzzed. A text from my foreman, poker night. You in? I smiled. And for the first time that day, it was real. I texted back, absolutely. Then I locked the door, and walked back to my garage. Because some things are worth restoring. And some things are better left in the past.